Alright, good evening everyone to my demonstration of rate-based versus position-based autopilot. So we're going to talk about the different types of autopilots there are, basically the two basic types. And I'm of course going to use Explain 11 or a pre-beta development version of Explain 11.30 to demonstrate the differences. Not everything I'm going to show you will work on the released version of Explain, so the usual caveat with my videos is everything I show might take a month or two until it gets to your Explain. Alright, and you are probably wondering why I'm showing an image of Google Street View right now. So, the story about rate-based versus position-based autopilots starts at the Mineral Wells Airport in Texas. So, yeah, I used Google Street View to put us there. Mineral Wells, Texas is the autopilot capital of the world. 80% of all autopilots made in the world come out of Mineral Wells, Texas, of all places. And I put us here on Google Street View at the northwest corner of the airport, and we can zoom in a little bit to the airport sign here. And if you could read the signs here, unfortunately you can. The resolution is too small on Google Street View. It says left on the left sign for S-Tec and right here for Century Flight. So those are the two companies located here at the Mineral Wells Airport in Texas. Century Flight Systems, of course, being the older one, which has been making autopilots for a long time here, and they make position-based autopilots. And on the left, the road takes you down to a little further down here is one S-Tec way, and at one S-Tec way there is what is today called Genesis Systems, historically S-Tec, that make, I guess, most of the rate-based autopilots that are out there on the market today. So some people claim that S-Tec is short for stolen technology, because S-Tec was founded by two engineers who left Century Flight. Of course, I'm not going to comment on that. But essentially, if you are flying a general aviation aircraft today, chances are you either have a Century or an S-Tec, or I guess a Bendix King autopilot in it. Alright, so yeah, this is where our story starts. This is the Mineral Wells Airport. Here is S-Tec. Down here is Century. So let's take a look at their autopilots and what the differences are. This is the picture I was going for. 80% of all autopilots in the world made in Mineral Wells, Texas, autopilot capital of the world. Alright, so this is a systems overview of the S-Tec 55X autopilot, and this is the prime example of a rate-based autopilot. And opposed to that, we have the Century 2000 autopilot, which is the classic position-based autopilot. And we also have, I didn't find such a great wiring diagram for that, but I also have a manual for that. And but I have a wiring diagram of another very, very popular, very widely used position-based autopilot, and that is the GFC 700 that is in the modern G1000 equipped planes. So the difference between a rate-based and a position-based autopilot is in the gyros they use to generate the steering commands. And the position-based autopilot, like the GFC 700 on the G1000, as you have it in Explain, generates the steering commands based on the attitude gyro. So based on the gyro, that provides the attitude information for your artificial horizon. And the rate-based autopilot instead, if we move over here to the rate-based autopilot block diagram, gets the steering cues from the turn coordinator, not from the artificial horizon, but from the turn coordinator gyro, and as you can see here, from the absolute pressure transducer. So it does not use a gyro for pitch information, but instead it uses the static system to get the get the altitude and the altitude rate of change. As you can see here in this block diagram, the artificial horizon part with the flight director is optional, and the HSI gyro, or the directional gyro, is labeled optional. We don't need that for the autopilot to work. The autopilot is driven off the turn coordinator gyro and the static port absolute pressure transducer. Opposed to that, the position-based autopilot is driven off the attitude gyro and the directional gyro for pitch, bank, turn, and course information. And the GFC 700 is just a modern variant of that. If you take a look at the block diagram here, we have the two things that the pilot can see in the cockpit, the PFD and the MFD. And behind it are the GIAs, the integrated avionics units, so those are the computer parts. And then we have the different sensors that they work on, and that's the air data computer. This is where the static port and the pitot tube feed into to get the air data, and the AHAR system. So, and this is the equivalent of the attitude gyro in the older Century system. So the older Century autopilot uses this gyro in here, this rotating and spinning electrical gyro to get the position information, and the modern G1000 variant obviously uses the electronic AHAR system and the magnetometer for that. All right, so now that we know in theory what the difference between rate-based and position-based autopilots is, we need to talk about how do they fly differently, what are the implications for using them, and how do they behave in certain failure modes. And then at the end of the stream, we can briefly talk about the pros and cons of each system, like whether is it always better to have a position-based autopilot? Is it maybe sometimes better to have a rate-based autopilot? And in order to do that, we are going to start with the one that you are most familiar with, and that is, of course, the position-based autopilot. So let me switch over to X-Plane and get X-Plane full screen for you so that you see my X-Plane screen. There you go, you should be seeing my X-Plane screen now. And as you can see here, we are flying the 172, obviously. And I actually wanted to start in the G1000 first, instead of the analog one. Okay, so let us switch over to the G1000 real quick. There you go. All right, so here's our 172. We are flying along, fat, dumb, and happy. It's of course no coincidence that we are near Mineral Wells, Texas right now. And we're going to switch on the autopilot, and you will immediately see what happens with a position-based autopilot. So we're flying along here. I hit the AP button, and it locks on to roll and pitch, as it says up here in the mode, flight mode annunciator in the FMA. So it's locked on to a roll angle and a pitch angle. And it gets that from the AHAR system, from the attitude and heading reference system. Let me clear out that nonsensical flight plan here. I have no idea what that was. And set us up just for the Mineral Wells Airport in case we want to go there. All right. So And the difference you will see when I switch into control wheel steering and see how the plane reacts to different speeds. So I press the control wheel steering button. I've assigned myself a button on the joystick for that. And I'm going to put the plane in the 10-degree bank right here. And I'm going to keep the pitch attitude, I guess, right where it is. So I let go of control wheel steering, and you see it is keeping the 10-degree pitch and the 10-degree bank and the 5-degree pitch. So let's see what happens if we fly faster. So I add the throttle, and as you can see, the airspeed is of course going up. And since we now have more engine power, you can see the vertical speed is going up because the pitch attitude is kept constant, and with more engine power we get more climb rate out of it. Obvious, right? What you will also notice is that our rate of turn is diminishing because with more airspeed and a constant bank angle, we get a lower rate of turn. And of course, the reverse is true if we slow down. If I pull out the throttle, we get slower. Of course, we stop climbing because at the same pitch attitude, we have less vertical speed. As you can see, we are now starting to descend. And if you watch closely, our rate of turn indicator here, it has gotten longer. It has gotten much longer because at a lower speed, with the same bank angle, we are turning more. All right, so this is what the position-based autopilot does. It works off of roll and of bank angle and pitch angle. And of course, if the reference for that fails, guess what? It's not going to work. So hang on, what did I want to do? Yeah, I wanted to fail the AHARS system. Let's do that. So I do instruments, sensor. No, I think it's under G1000, I think. Failures, AHARS, there you go. That's the failure I was looking for. All right, let's fail the AHARS. Yeah, the sound you're not hearing was the autopilot disconnect. Yeah, so with a failed AHARS, we lost the attitude and the autopilot disconnected because it has no idea where to go without pitch and bank information. Yeah, what's it supposed to be doing? It has no idea, obviously. All right, let's repair that. Damn it, I keep clicking the wrong thing. Let's repair the AHARS, fix all systems. The AHARS is back and working. Let me put the control wheel steering back here. And whoops, turn the autopilot back on. And of course, we're back in business. All right. Pretty obvious. I mean, this is kind of what you expect. All right, let's talk about rate-based autopilots now. So for rate-based autopilots, I'm going to change into a plane that has exactly this installation we saw here with the System 55 and the turn coordinator that it drives. And this one is going to have an attitude indicator without the flight director. So let me change into our other 172. There we go. Here we are in our other 172. And as you can see down here, our S-Tec autopilot, this is the rate-based version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into control wheel steering, and I'm going to show you how it reacts to speed changes. So autopilot is active. I go into control wheel steering mode. Oh, it should display CWS on the display. It doesn't do that. I know why. Okay, I can change that, but doesn't matter. All right. So as with the G1000 previously, I'm going to put the airplane in a 10-degree bank right about here, and now I let go of the control wheel steering button. All right. So control wheel steering button is not pressed anymore. The autopilot servos are on, and the autopilot keeps the airplane at this position, right? All right, so let's see what the difference is between rate-based and position-based. Full throttle. So as you can see, we're getting faster, but at the same time, the nose is coming down. See how the autopilot is reducing the pitch? That is because it has no idea what the pitch angle is, but it senses from the static port that we're climbing. And as you can see here, the vertical speed display, this is always on the S-Tec 55 when you're in control wheel steering mode, or when you are in hold mode. Because it has no idea of your pitch. It can only keep the vertical speed. Another thing you will notice is that our bank angle has increased from 10 degrees to about 15 degrees. Because with a higher airspeed, we need more bank to keep the turn rate up. Because what the autopilot does, when I let go of the control wheel steering button, it remembered the turn coordinator position right here, how much turn we were doing. And it tries to keep that. And with a higher airspeed, we need more bank to achieve the same rate of turn. All right, so and the inverse is obviously true, also true. I'm going to pull the throttle out now. And what you'll see is it needs to pitch up to keep the airplane from sinking, and as you can see, it banks back to the left. It takes the bank out. Why? Because we're getting slower and we need less bank at the slower airspeed to keep the turn coordinator needle here, to keep the same rate of turn. With the same rate of turn at a lower airspeed, we need a lower bank. As you can see, the bank angle has dropped below 10 degrees now. All right, so now you see how the rate-based autopilot reacts. All right, let me go back into control wheel steering and put the wings level, let go of control wheel steering. And as you can see here, it didn't really click out when I let go of the button. And this is typical because it is not only based off the rate of turn, it's based on an average of rate of turn and rate of bank, just like the turn coordinator is, because the gyro is mounted at a 45-degree angle. Oh, by the way, watch the vertical speed output here on the autopilot. While I keep the control wheel steering button pushed, you see that the vertical speed readout on the autopilot tracks what I'm doing. Yeah, and that is because the static system, the absolute pressure transducer, notices the pressure changes just like the VVI, just like the vertical speed indicator. And this is what the autopilot is driven off. So on the real airplane, the way it works is, of course, as you know, on the 172, the static port for the pilot instruments is about here, somewhere here. And on the real airplane, the static ports for the autopilot are mounted at the tail, right about here, I think, where the N or the 1 is, right about there. All right, so now that we know how the rate-based autopilot reacts, let's see how it reacts to failures. So the great thing about the rate-based, I keep clicking this. The great thing about the rate-based autopilot is that it does not depend on the vacuum system. So if we fail the vacuum system, you will see that my my attitude gyro, the artificial horizon, is going to go away now. So as you can see, the vacuum gauge has dropped to 0. The failure flag has dropped on the artificial horizon, on the attitude indicator. And the indicator doesn't not fail immediately. So if I do this, see, it's still reacting. So some people say, hey, X-plane is broken. It doesn't model vacuum failures. No, it does. And this is exactly what happens in real life. The gyro takes some time to spin down, and that can be a surprisingly long time if the gyro is new, if the gyro has a low friction, because it's a good gyro. It takes minutes for this thing to spin down. So it's not unusual that it takes like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe more, for this thing to spin down. All right, but as we keep flying, you notice it's starting to go, right? I mean, it still reacts somewhat to what we're doing, yeah, but it is drifting. It is drifting. We are losing it. So with the vacuum failure, this gyro is spinning down, this gyro is spinning down, and we are losing the attitude reference, obviously. But the rate-based autopilot, because it works based off the turn coordinator, keeps going. And that is the great thing about the rate-based autopilot, because the turn coordinator is much more robust than the vacuum system. Yeah, vacuum pumps fail. I have had that happen to me twice so far. Vacuum pumps fail, but I've yet to see a spontaneously failing turn coordinator. And that is why it's so great to base the autopilot off the turn coordinator, at least in a small airplane. All right, so obviously, if I fail the turn coordinator, we will lose the reference for the autopilot. I'm not quite sure how if this is modeled already correctly in X-Plane, because this is work in progress. This is something I'm working on right now. So let's kill the turn coordinator, and the autopilot should stop working, I guess. Let's see. Pilot turn coordinator fail. Apply. Bam. All right. So we lost the turn coordinator. Let's see. Did we lose it? Yeah. What do you know? We lost the turn coordinator. All right. And yep. Look at that. The autopilot cannot keep the turn rate anymore. Yep. Okay. I guess the autopilot should probably have a failure message on the display now. We have that. It is modeled in a 3D model. I haven't hooked it up yet. I guess I need to invent a few data refs for that. Yeah, but as you can see, the autopilot cannot keep a turn rate anymore, because, well, it has no turn rate anymore. The turn coordinator is frozen. All right, let's repair everything. And as you can see, the gyro is going to spin up, and then we are going to get the attitude reference back. So fix all systems, apply, and whoop! There you go. Gyro is spinning up, rectifying itself. And yep, we had a little bit of drift. I just pushed the D key to tweak the directional gyro again. And of course, as you can see, the directional gyro also repaired because I clicked repair all. So if I put the plane in a turn now, see, again, it holds the turn rate as it did, as it wouldn't do, of course, when the turn coordinator was failed. All right, this is the difference between rate-based and position-based autopilots. One works off the attitude gyro, one works off the turn coordinator. So, and now that we learned that the old Century Flight company makes primarily position-based autopilots, except their cheapest one, I guess, and S-Tec makes rate-based autopilots. Of course, we're back to the old question, the century-old question: what is better? What is the better autopilot? And I guess, well, one way to answer this is really depends on the equipment of your aircraft. If you have a vacuum-driven gyro system in your aircraft, this is about the most likely thing to fail on you. So if you have a vacuum-driven, classic vacuum-driven Cessna, the safest thing you can have is a rate-based autopilot, because that thing will work. If you have a modern general aviation aircraft that has electric gyros, or even better, an AHAR system like in the G1000, then of course you can have the luxury of having a proper position-based autopilot, because the position-based autopilot does have advantages. It is much better in turbulence. It is much better at keeping a constant attitude and riding out turbulence. No question asked. So I guess the position-based autopilot is what you have in airliners, what you have in business jets, what you have in King Airs and Barons and Cirruses and Bonanzas, so or any reasonably modern aircraft with reasonably sophisticated AHAR systems or electric gyro systems, this is where it's great to have a position-based autopilot because it's just better in turbulence. But for your 172 with a vacuum system, the best thing you can have is the rate-based system. Yeah, and that takes us back to the Mineral Wells Airport, left for S-Tec, right for Century. And now you know the difference between the two autopilot systems. And with X-Plane 1130, you will even be able to experience that firsthand in X-Plane. And that concludes tonight's presentation. Thank you.